Thank you.
So, can we start, Alan, just with a brief introduction to yourself, your background in the industry?
Sure. Well, I'm French, US educated, with a degree from MIT, went to work for the banking industry early on, and then the marine industry, and then in the early 80s started with e-commerce. We were actually selling an e-commerce system back in the early 80s using a 300 baud terminal thermal printer, where you'd put the phone in the terminal to actually access a database that was available worldwide then, doing availability of ships for servicing oil platforms. Anyway, so we kept, or I really kept an interest in this, and then when the internet came about, co-founded a company called Silverwire that was essentially a B2B selling to the photo industry that was acquired in 2006 by HP. And since we started this company called Exmart with actually an old core team from that Silverwire company.
And what does Exmart do?
Exmart is primarily an outsourcing company these days. We really started in this form about 2 years ago. The real active segment of is, of course, the telecom, and we are selling smartphone development in Europe, in the United States, and specializing in iPhone with a team of iPhone developers here in China. And doing cross-platform stuff. We've been doing stuff on Android, on BlackBerry RIM as well.
So, what's the revenue model?
Well, concerning the outsourcing, it's simply we do project basis charging. And
this allows you to fund some of the other projects that
correct. So the idea was to line up the company with a revenue base which is fairly easy to get to, in that you sell something that you don't have to explain much. And but the real goal is that we're interested in China to start SAS businesses, and the first one that we are zeroing on is an education play, and we have still developing and very close now to finishing the development of a platform called X-Lesson. And the key to that, or the subject of that, is essentially give the possibility of existing teaching businesses to take their business online out of the classic infrastructure of schools and so on. And the idea is that anybody will be able to set up a school on the internet in a few clicks.
And who are the target customers?
We are looking at the smaller segment of the education market. We're talking about small schools. We're looking at people that are doing a vocational or a specialized training. We're looking at people that are single teachers and that need to want to teach private courses and things like this.
Where?
So we currently already have one customer who is teaching English in the Chinese market, mostly with kids. He's using the system as really a complement to his traditional teaching, and since people sometimes have to travel far away from where they are to bring their kids to the school, having an online complement is actually quite useful. It helps the school to offer a more continuous kind of teaching, especially in language. That's kind of important because you want to do it continuously so that it really sinks in. So this system really helps do this.
But geographically speaking?
Geographically speaking, that's we first want to do and offer this service to the Chinese market here in the Beijing area first, and then expand out of Beijing. But it's also another unit inside the company that will be marketing this over the internet through the normal social networking platforms such as Facebook and things like this.
How do you find the Chinese market? Because obviously it's quite different selling something inside China from doing outsourcing work based here.
Right. Well, first of all, it's obvious that, as you say, it is quite different, and we have Chinese people on staff that understand the local market and that will be selling to the Chinese market with a good Chinese background. I am the only non-Chinese in the company and intend to keep it that way.
But to get specific, how is it different selling here from, because I mean you obviously have a lot of experience in a range of tech fields in Europe.
Well, the big difference, I think, well, let's try and compare it to the United States. When you sell in the United States, it's amazing how fast you can get to the right people very quickly, even if you are an unknown entity. And in China, it's quite different. To illustrate with an example, recently I was trying to have a friend who asked me who were the nice, interesting companies to talk to for buying solar cells. And we did find him a few companies, and he started calling out, and he was basically told, well, we don't really talk to people from abroad that we don't know. So that's an extreme illustration, of course, but that is, from my point of view as a European, a very challenging thing, is to understand how you have to approach Chinese customers, how you got to cultivate relationship, and especially, I think, one thing that is key here is being very patient, which is okay.
It seems, you know, from the way you talk about it, you're not particularly obsessed with the Chinese market, though. You're looking to build a global company.
Correct. I think that, well, the circumstances are such that we have a strong technical team, a stable team. We don't have much of a retention problem in our company. And we do believe that, looking at this long term, that is actually an interesting proposition to build a business started in China and branch out of it.
Why China and not, for example, India?
Well, in my particular case, it's really circumstantial in that the basis of the company are people that already I used to work with before we created the company. But I think that overall, if you compare it with India, the one disadvantage maybe that China has is the language barrier. But once you go beyond that, I really think that by and large, from experience in working with both areas, that the Chinese are more reliable.
More reliable?
Well, that's what my experience shows me that, yeah.
In what way? More reliable as partners, employees, or?
I think here when at least in our company, when we commit to deadlines, when we commit to prices, etc., we have a tendency to stick to it and make a maximum effort and deliver as much as we can to stick by those commitments. I've not operated a business out of India, but my experience has not been the most terrific in the past.
So product number one really is in the education sector. Have you got a vision for what happens once that's launched and running? Well,
one by one, I don't really have a vision for the next one, but there will be a next one. Right now, we need to start this education thing.
What do you make of related businesses that offer more specific platforms in the education sector? I mean, you know, I'm thinking of, say, there are now a number of websites and web services that do language teaching specifically. Some of them are a little bit more like yours in the sense that they're offering platforms that they're hoping to sell to schools. Some of them are actual services that just use their own technology to do online lessons. How do you see the competition in this sector?
Well, first of all, internationally, there are people that are going to be approaching this market much the same way we are. There's a company, namely in the US, called WizIQ. We're very much the same model. I think our differentiation is that we are trying to bring our customers the facility to customize the websites, and that when they will offer their own teaching services to their customers, it'll really look like it is their site. It's their logo, their brand name, will not appear anywhere. And I think that's actually quite a desirable thing for most of the people that want to do this teaching online. So I'd say that's one of the differentiating factors.
Have you got a 5-year plan? I asked Mr. Lisa Chung just now, and you know, this is China. Do you have a 5-year plan?
At this stage, I don't have a 5-year plan that I can deliver, but we do basically have a path forward. We know where we're going. At this stage, we're at the lucky stage where we don't really need any external funding, so we haven't done the traditional exercise of doing the 5-year business plan and so on. But again, we know where we're going. One of the reasons we wanted to present this here today is to get an exposure to people that may be interested in this sector and eventually funding a firm like ours, but we want to do this at a later stage. But the plan right now is quite clearly to obviously finish the development of the system, finish testing it in real life with customers, then go on to commercializing the service here in the Beijing area and beyond, as well as approaching the international market for internet marketing.
So the reason you don't need funding right now is basically because of your outsourcing business, is
Correct.
that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Was this a strategy you began right from the beginning? Because it makes a lot of sense to me for China that you would do that. But it is quite unusual, I think, to launch a product based on work that you're doing, outsourcing work.
Well, with this business, it is important to have obviously the engineering resources to be able to deliver the service. So having engineers with particular capabilities is of course important, and we do have them, Java-based programmers. And having the company work with a basic activity that can bring in a revenue stream to secure employment for everybody is one way to essentially, especially in the startup phase, ensure that everybody can stay. And even though we may be doing a little bit of trial and error with this new service, we won't have to worry much about cash.
One last question. What advice would you give an entrepreneur or a business looking to come to China, either in order to produce code here or in order to sell to the Chinese market?
The key thing, because if you look at it from the outside, if you look at people in Europe or in America, there's a lot of misconception about what China is, and especially how Chinese people behave. I'm fortunate to have been active in Asia for the last 20 years, and I have, think, a good feeling of what you must do in order to be trusted by the local people and acquire their trust. And I think this is really the key component, pretty much like every business, but trust and building trust and solidly building trust is the key thing to start building an operation that eventually can become successful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, give me that.